All right, on to team number six. Yeah, so six. Yeah, six. Team number six. Um, and that is I talked about this with you last night, Andre. So that's you. For Jersey Devils. So at 16 overall, 16 nomination, you took Jonathan Taylor at 68. Um, Last year as a rookie, his first 10 weeks were a little rough. It took him some time to really get going because I think he was only a top 15 running back in the first 10 weeks. It took him because of Naheem Hines, and despite Marlon Mack's injury, it took him some time. So the first 10 weeks, he was around 22, 23 fantasy running back, but he stayed healthy. But in those last 6 games, it's kind of the switch was flipped because he was the number 7 running back in fantasy those last 6 games. So he finished as top 10 running back because he was healthy the whole season. He was number 8 running back in fantasy. He was super efficient, so 5 yards per carry. He had an 88% catch rate, 7.3 yards per touch, counting the passing. So even with the return of Marlon Mack and even with the presence of Naheem Hines, I think that Jonathan Taylor, his ceiling is higher than I thought it would be, and his floor is super high already. So yeah, he was third in rushing last year. He was the number 6 fantasy running back last year, and I think he's a top 5 running back this year. So if we're going McCaffrey, I guess you could say I got Jonathan Taylor in there. I got obviously Antonio Gibson in there. I actually think I have Cook outside of my top 5, funny enough. I think, I got Elliott outside my top 5 too. And Kamara, there we go. So Kamara, McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson, and losing my mind. Henry? No, Eckler, then Henry. So I have a little weird setup. But anyway, the point is, I think Jonathan Taylor is either a borderline top 5 running back in fantasy, or he is solidly in the top 5 running backs. I don't think he'll get 300 carries this year, but I think he'll get more carries than he did last year. So maybe 250, 275. He'll probably rush for maybe 1,300 yards, maybe get 10 touchdowns, plus another 40 receptions. He is the closest thing I can remember, honestly, to Marshawn Lynch. I compare Derrick Henry more to Brandon Jacobs, because he's slower than Marshawn, actually. And I think of Taylor, when I see Taylor play, I think of Marshawn Lynch. And I think especially now with the downgrade from Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz, and that is very much a downgrade. Carson Wentz was awful last year. Second worst quarterback in football. Taylor ought to get a ton of time. He ought to be touching the ball basically every drive, 5 to 10 times a drive. If they're scoring in 10 plays, he's touching the ball 5 times. So, he's only 22. He's ascending. I think he'll get more fantasy points than he had last year. So, Jonathan Taylor, 68. Right at his price point. So, right on time. We then waited till 41. We talked about this. You were pushing Adam Thielen. Thielen had a great year last year. He was good. He had 74 receptions. 74 receptions, about a little over 900 yards, but he had a ton of touchdowns. He had 14, which really, really helped him. But he was really good at the beginning of the season, and he had 6 top 10 fantasy weeks. But towards the end of the season, he was kind of petering off, and I attribute that a lot to Justin Jefferson, the ascent of Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson looked like the best receiver in fantasy last year. He looked like a top 10 receiver in the NFL last year. And a year older from Thielen, Mr. Anti-Vaxxer, I think he's going to get less play because Jefferson's just going to get the ball more. I don't think 21 for Thielen is bad per se. He's just not a player I would want on my team. Not only is he anti-vax, but also just, he's not going to do what he did last year. I think he's going to be worse because I think they're going to try and get the ball more to Jefferson. And obviously last year was the first time Dalvin Cook was healthy, but they want to run the ball with Dalvin Cook. So, either Dalvin Cook or his backup Madison's going to get a ton of touches, and that makes Thielen like the number 3 option. So I think he's possibly like a solid number 2 receiver. He's just not like a top receiver I'd want on. He's not a receiver I'd want on my team. He's very, solid floor, low ceiling, but I guess the floor could crater if, because he's anti-vax and I guess the other mitigating circumstances. But, he's a solid number 2 receiver. I just don't want him on my team. I don't think he's going to be that good. I think he'll be worse than last year because of all the mitigating circumstances around him. That being said, we took Cooper Kupp for 20. Like little Cooper Kupp, I know Adam Berry has mentioned little Cooper Kupp. I like Cooper Kupp this year because he's the slot receiver with the Rams. The Rams finally got a quarterback in Matthew Stafford. Kupp ought to be pushing to lead the league in receptions. So I'm thinking like a cool 100, 105 in receptions, 1,000 yards. Maybe not as many, maybe a little more in touchdowns, so like 7. But, Kupp is one of the best, if not the best, slot receivers in football. He was the number 4 fantasy receiver in 2016. Last year he was 26th. So he had quite a fall, but I think that had more to do with touchdown regression. He only scored 3 touchdowns. In 2016 he scored 10. I don't think he's going to get 3 or 10. I think it's more in the middle, like 6 or 7. But he's a really good red zone player, and he's very, very consistent. He gets the most targets of anyone in that offense, so more than Robert Woods, more than Van Jefferson, who I guess is the number 2 receiver this year, more than Tyler Higbee, obviously. I think Stafford will actually be able to get him the ball. And, yeah, just the upgrade with Stafford makes Kupp a very solid, for me, number 2 receiver. Again, so I think whereas Thielen's either holding steady or slightly going down, I think Kupp is going up. And, yeah, Kupp is going up. So I think with Stafford, that's really good. We'll get into that more because you took the Rams players. But, yeah, no, Cooper Kupp is your number 2 receiver. Really like him. Really good player. Good possession receiver. Crafty. He reminds me a lot of Julian Edelman. But, yeah, no, you have a rock-solid receiving core with a very good top running back. So then at 55, we spent 18 on Leonard Fournette. So this is like the kind of back and forth with me. So I had this talk, I think, with Brian last year. It's like, how could you still believe in Leonard Fournette? And my response is because I think I see the talent of Fournette and it's still there. The issue is Leonard Fournette is not used the way I would like him to be. In the playoffs, when Leonard Fournette is getting 20 to 25 touches and you allow him to basically run off duo, so duo run blocking outside zone, but the Bucs run a lot of duo. If you don't know what that is, that's a lot of think of it like power, and then you get a guard pulling around the end. So they run a lot of duo, and you just let Fournette if you let him get ahead of steam and you let him get run downhill, Fournette is basically near unstoppable because he's a big fella who has tremendous speed. It looks like he doesn't have as much speed as he did coming out of college. It looks like those high ankle injuries have caught up to him, but I still think he's got tremendous, tremendous talent. And when you let him get going and you let him put it all together, you get what you get in the playoff run. The issue is I don't think the Bucs are going to do that with him because we still have Ronald Jones, who was injured the first couple games of the playoffs last year, and then they were just like, oh, Fournette's doing really well. I guess we'll just keep giving him the ball. And then the NFC Championship game, and then the Super Bowl happened. So, but you still have Ronald Jones. They brought in Giovanni Bernard, who is a very good pass-catching back. So basically to play the James White role for Tom Brady. I would say neither Fournette nor Ronald Jones is a terrible pass blocker, and he can't catch. He has hands of stone. That's why I don't like Ronald Jones. He can be quick. Like, I'm sure Sarah Rich will just be like, oh, colanders are useful, and, through the hole he can get there, and he's got speed. He can't catch, and he can't block. He basically, you got to feed him the ball over and over again. I don't want to build an offense around Ronald Jones. Fournette is a better pass catcher. He's not great, but he had 70 receptions one season. And I think he has much, much better vision. He's not as quick as I would say, but he's fast. He's got long speed. He's when you let him get ahead of steam. But the best pass catcher is obviously Bernard. And so if the Bucs are constantly rotating between the three, that lowers the upside of all. And that's the thing I think with Fournette. So while I think that it's a good bet Fournette will lead the backfield, I'm unhappy that Bruce Arians will not give Fournette the kind of workload that would justify his talents per se. Fournette has had 2 top 10 fantasy seasons in his career, so we're going into year 5, so yeah. But I don't think I see him as being, unfortunately, I think he's like a flex play. He's like a top 30 running back. And that has less to do with his talent and more to do with the situation. I think talent counts for more, but the Bucs are a bit weird because they're a team going for a Super Bowl, so they want to keep everyone fresh for the playoffs. So if Ronald Jones gets hurt, then yeah, Fournette moves up quite quickly in the fantasy landscape because then you give him a workload like you did in the playoffs. But as long as Jones is healthy and Bernard to a lesser extent is healthy, then you limit the amount of touches Fournette gets, and he's maybe only touching the ball 15 times a game. And so obviously not as many fantasy points. So while I like Fournette, I think he's only going to get maybe 700 yards and maybe like 30 receptions. And so that makes him more of a flex play than anything else. I think he's a good player. I like him. I'd want him on my team. I just think he's stuck in like a 3-headed time monster thing. Kind of like the Texans. Like, I don't like any of the Texans running back because there's 4 of them. Like, what good does that do me? So, yeah. If Ronald Jones could just, like, get cut and just not be on the team or, play for the Texans where he belongs, things would be a lot better. But as they stand now, we're kind of just waiting for an injury. But that's okay if Fournette's kind of like the flex play, because then we got Darrell Henderson, I guess you could say, is your number 2 running back. So once Cam Akers tore his Achilles in preseason, it's kind of like the same thing with J.K. Dobbins. I think Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins are more talented than Gus Edwards and Darrell Henderson Jr. But unlike Gus Edwards, I think Henderson Jr. is still quite a talented player. He was a 3rd-round pick himself in 2019. He is a very good pass catcher. He's very efficient. They don't use him as much, funny enough, as a pass catcher. I guess they use Akers more in that role. Henderson's more of a outside zone kind of running back, but he's in a Sean McVay offense. So really the question comes down to with Darrell Henderson Jr. is, can he stay healthy? He's been injured every year he's been in the league. That's the whole reason why Cam Akers got a shot last year and looked good. Same thing happened with Gurley before that when he was backing him up. Same thing happened with Malcolm Brown before that. So we're going into year 3. He's been injured both years. Can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy, then he's probably getting like 800, 900 yards and maybe another 30 receptions, which doesn't sound like a lot, but he'll get a lot of touchdowns with the Rams. So I could see him being like a number 2, a little like a high-end flex, a low-end number 2 with a possibility for more. I could see him being like a top 20 running back, maybe even top 15, but he's got to stay healthy. He hasn't stayed healthy. Can he stay healthy? Because he does have talent. He's He's not. If Akers is very fast, Henderson has good vision. Henderson has less physical talent, but he's a very good. The whole reason the Rams brought him in is because like Cooper Kupp, he's got a great mind. He always hits the right hole. He's good in pass protection. He's a pretty good pass catcher. He's very well rounded. So it's really just a matter of, can he stay healthy? Because if he can, then this is a terrific pick with great value. You only got him for, what, $29? So yeah, I think Henderson, like, there were players that went for quite a bit more than Henderson, who I thought were just like, well, like, they're around the same type of player as Henderson, and the role with Henderson's better. I mean, David Montgomery went for 51. I think that's justified. I think David Montgomery has shown that. But if we're just going on talent for talent, situation for situation, player for player, I think Darrell Henderson is about the same as David Montgomery, and you got him for, David Montgomery went for 51. Henderson went for 29. That's why I was bidding for Henderson, because I like him. He's in a really good situation, and he's a pretty good player himself. So yeah, that kind of makes up for Fournette being the flex, I suppose. We took Russell Wilson with the next pick. We like Russ. Will he cook? I don't know. They cut the offensive coordinator, who went pass heavy, to go run heavy. So it comes back to the standard argument. It's like, oh, well, Lamar Jackson's going to get hurt because he's a rushing quarterback. Well, did you know in his career that Russell Wilson has gotten hit more times than Lamar Jackson because the O-line's terrible? I don't know, man. You keep telling me about Lamar's going to get hurt rushing, and I see, but he's got a good O-line, and then Russell Wilson just gets murdered because his O-line's bad. So I think the O-line this year is better than it's been in his whole career, but it's still just average at best. And, yeah, last year he started off the season on fire until about week 8 when Pete Carroll's just like, no, we got to run the ball more. It was that Monday night game against Arizona where DK Metcalf basically had that great tackle. That was the game where they're just like, we got to run the ball more. And so after that, his passing volume went down. I don't know why they don't throw the ball more. The best players in the NFL at quarterback right now, the most ascendant players are Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I guess you could say Lamar Jackson runs the ball quite a bit. But even then, I would counter with Russell Wilson is one of the best passers in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. Russell Wilson's got a Super Bowl ring. Russell Wilson's very good in the pocket. Russell Wilson gets hit a lot. I can appreciate that they want to maybe run the ball to protect him, but they're talking like they want to run the ball like 60% of the time. Nobody in the NFL runs the ball more than 50% of the time. Not one single team. Pete Carroll's talking about running the ball 60% of the time. So yeah, no, Russell is a back-end number one. He's a top 10 quarterback, but he's a back-end top 10 quarterback. It's not anything that he did. It's just I think he's going to have a worse season than he did last year because they want to run the ball more. It's not his fault, but I think you'll get 4,000 yards, but you'll get a lot less touchdowns, maybe like 30. He had 40 last year. And that's just because they want to run the ball more with Chris Carson. That's why they gave Chris Carson that big contract extension. Do I agree with it? No, but that's the reality of it. Russell Wilson has been a top 5 most hit quarterback in the NFL every year of his career. Every single year. Last year he was in the top 3. He's never missed a game, so, knock on wood, but still, he's getting killed out here. I don't know, man. I like Wilson, don't love him. I think he's a rock-solid quarterback. We then rolled the dice on Kyle Pitts. So Hannah really likes Kyle Pitts. Here's what I will say. Kyle Pitts is a very talented player. I would not have taken Kyle Pitts that high. I don't take tight ends that high. Why don't I take tight ends that high? Gronk lasts until the second round, and Gronk can pass and block. Kyle Pitts can't block. Kyle Pitts can catch, but unless Kyle Pitts is Calvin Johnson, I don't really care what he can do at tight end. So if you're drafting him to be a receiver, then fine. He's got to essentially be Calvin Johnson. He's 6'6", he's athletic, he runs a 4.44, He's he's a little thin at 240 pounds for his size. He'll probably be the number 2 target behind Calvin Ridley. It's not a bad bet. It's not a bad gamble, especially considering we don't really know what to do with Fournette, who's your flex. Mostly because Ronald Jones is going to be stealing carries for reasons unknown. But, yeah, I mean, if I can start Pitts and see if the Matt Ryan of old comes back and they just go super throwing all the time, or the 2016 MVP Ryan makes a return, obviously Kyle Pitts has a lot of utility. Julio was very good last year. Julio was gone. They brought in Mike Davis as the running back to replace Todd Gurley, so I see that kind of as relatively around the same place. I like Pitts. I think $8 ain't bad for him. I think he's a quality player. I just see him as no different as a bunch of wide receivers, so I think maybe 8 was a little rich, but he's got a lot of upside, so I don't mind it. I think he's a good player. In the actual NFL draft, I would not be taking a tight end 4 overall. I would not be taking a tight end in the top 10. The last tight end to be drafted that high was Mike Ditka, and that was the 60s. Yeah, that's a long time ago. So then we have Matthew Stafford. We took another quarterback. I mean, you got a good deal on him, and I like Stafford a lot, and he could maybe even push for MVP with McVay, so I guess you can see what happens with him. But really, I think Stafford's probably more of a... I think Stafford has more upside than Wilson, but he has more downside depending on how things go with Henderson. More so than anything else, I'm surprised that we went with Stafford and Darrell Henderson Jr. and Cooper Kupp. I mean, that's a lot of betting on the Rams. That's like me with the Ravens. You're betting on the Rams. Now, to be fair, the Rams' offense with McVay is very good, but the Ravens' O-line is better than the Rams. So I would hope that you would diversify and try and move Stafford, especially considering some of the starting quarterbacks in our league. But, maybe you want to keep him. I'm not sure. I think he'll be very good. I think the fact that he's out of Detroit is good for him. I think he has the possibility of being a top 5 quarterback. In the meantime, I see him the same as Russell Wilson, being a top 10-ish quarterback with the possibility for much more. He's a very, very good quarterback, but you're not going to get any rushing, so you just need McVay to just dial up very good passes with him. But I think they might rush the ball a lot with Darrell Henderson, even with Malcolm Brown in Miami and Cam Akers out for the year. But I do like Stafford quite a bit. I can see like 4,500 yards and maybe like 30 touchdowns as well. So yeah, better stats than Russell Wilson. Maybe less rushing, maybe like 130 to Russell's like 300. So that might make a difference. So they're around the same, but I think Stafford's in a better situation. But really, if you could move either of them for something, I would probably consider that, because I don't want to be carrying a backup quarterback the whole season. That would suck. That is a waste of a roster spot, especially with bye weeks. Then, I guess we're just going to kind of roll all of these into the same. So you had gone 8 on Russell Wilson, 8 on Kyle Pitts, 3 on Matthew Stafford. You later go $1 on Shenault, who I like, even though he's trapped in Jacksonville. He might lead the team in receptions. I just don't think he'll get a lot of play as in the red zone. Nyheim Hines, I guess, is the handcuff to Taylor, so he catches the ball a lot. Devontae Parker is technically the number 1 Miami, but I'm not really loving Miami, mostly because there's a whole lot of people in Miami. So, but really, this is all about Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is probably the best receiver prospect. I mean, we were talking about this last night. I think he actually might be a better receiver prospect than even Julio. So if we're going back, I'm thinking Calvin Johnson is the last receiver prospect who I think is better than Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase did not play this past year, but the year before he had the greatest season for a wide receiver ever with Joe Burrow. And now he's back with Joe Burrow. He's versatile, he's physical, he's fast, he has great hands, he's good at tracking the ball, he can break tackles, he does everything. He's only 21. He'll play a lot with the Bengals. It's really just a matter of, can Joe Burrow get him the ball? And my answer to that this year is sadly probably not. I think he'll get close to 1,000 yards. I think he'll get like a good 5, 6 touchdowns. But he has the type of talent to be a top 10 receiver in the NFL today. I think talent for talent, he's better than Justin Jefferson, who I think is a top 10 receiver today. But Bengals are really bad. Their coach is going to get fired at the end of the year. That O-line is not good. Joe Burrow was injured, and Joe Burrow has looked under fire in the preseason. I don't know what will happen. I think they got to feed Chase. Chase is putting up with more than Jefferson because he's got to deal with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Plus, they got Joe Mixon, who's kind of, Minnesota and Cincinnati are kind of similar. But I would say Minnesota's O-line is much better, and I think Minnesota's O-line is only average. Cincinnati's O-line is bad. Not even a below average, just bad. I like Chase a lot. I think he's got elite upside. I think he's someone that I would like to start at some point on my fantasy team. I just don't know how much I trust the Bengals to be able to use him properly or get him the ball. So I like the upside play on the talent, but the situation I hate. But for $10, I'm willing to roll the dice to see if I'm wrong. Yeah, we already mentioned Shenault. You took Crowder later on for a couple bucks. I don't know what the Jets are doing as far as the receiver room. I talked about Corey Davis in the last video. I think he's the number one. But then, we got Elijah Moore coming. Still talking up Elijah Moore. But yeah, they're still figuring that out. They just trade their tight end to Minnesota. Anyway, I guess I'll just kind of wrap here. But I think the team is good. There are things I like. Taylor, Kupp, Henderson, Wilson. I just think the team's upside's kind of capped, especially because you're running Stafford, Kupp, and Henderson, and you got to play at least 2 of the 3 every week. If the Rams play in the toughest division in football. If they have like a low-scoring game and you're starting Henderson and Stafford and Kupp, you're probably going to lose that week. So that's rough. Leonard Fournette, I like as a player and a talent. Situation sucks. He was not. Brian had him Brian traded him. He had him for most of last year. It took him a while to get going because they didn't trust him because they kept feeding the ball stupidly to Ronald Jones, and I don't want to be doing that. Ronald Jones is not a good running back. I am sorry. People can disagree with me. They are wrong. Ronald Jones is not. He can't catch. He can't block. He's got acceleration to get through the hole, but he has no vision, so it doesn't matter. So he's like a bad Miles Sanders. Fournette is a much better player, but he's in a timeshare on an offense with a ton of different weapons. So, yeah, between the Rams thing and Fournette, that's why I have you at 6. But obviously, I think your team's quite good. I think you ought to be in the trade market, though, just trying to diversify. I myself am in the trade market trying to diversify because I'm super Ravens heavy, just like you're super Rams heavy. So, and I don't love Thielen. I mentioned that before. I don't hate the price at 21. But I just think he's descending because I think it's Justin Jefferson's time. There's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of like seeing Calvin Ridley taking over for Julio Jones or DeAndre Hopkins taking over for Andre Johnson. You just have a great receiver, or I guess in this case Thielen, a very good receiver, kind of, going towards the sunset of their career while a younger player is just coming. I mean, Chris Carter, Randy Moss, this happens all the time. So, yeah, I would be actively trying to probably move one of the Rams players, probably the quarterback, because you don't really need Stafford, even if I like him, and there are teams that could use a quarterback. I'd also be trying to move Thielen, too, even though I think he's a solid number 2 receiver. I mean, he'd be the best receiver on my team for sure, but I'd be trying to move him just because, I just think he won't be as good as last year, and he's just super safe. He's not really got any real upside to him. So, but overall, I like the team. I don't love it, but I like the team quite a bit. I think the team's obviously a playoff team. With the right trades, obviously, you can push for a title. I would want to see how exactly that would work out or what you'd be rolling with. But as constructed, I think it's a very good team. You're definitely a top half team. So, yeah, that's my review of Jersey Devils.